Hello there. I recently tried an Etna Bianco from Alta Mora, and so today I thought I would try their Etna Rosso. So this is the 2020 Alta Mora Etna Rosso. The wine is made by the Cusumano family. They're quite a well-known family-owned wine-producing company, making their wines entirely in Sicily. The company, its current status, was founded in 2001 when two brothers, Diego and Alberto, took over a family business from their father, Francesco. They started out with an aim to make top quality Sicilian wines from local varieties. They tend to specialise in making wines from Nero d'Avola. They have two well-known flagship wines, one of them Sàgana, which is 100% Nero d'Avola, and the other Noah, which is a blend of Nero d'Avola with Merlot and Cabernet. They also produce a range of varietal cru wines from varieties such as Pinot Nero, Chardonnay and Moscato. Below this level, they also have a varietal-led range of Sicilian IGT wines, made from varieties such as Nero d'Avola, Merlot, Syrah, and another local grape variety, Insolia. In total, they make wine from about 500 hectares of vineyard, and this is spread over 7 locations in 4 different districts. And they say that this gives them access to vineyards with different soil types, different terroirs, different exposures. This enables them to optimize the performance of each of the different grape varieties and to get different expressions from different locations, and to be able to build complexity by blending from different locations. Alta Mora is a newer project for the Cusumano family, who purchased 3 vineyards on Mount Etna in April 2013. They'd been looking to do this for a while. The challenge of making wines on Mount Etna has become quite popular. The vineyards here will sit often between sort of 500 metres and 1,000 metres above sea level. So these are steep vineyards. It's hard work to tend them. These aren't readily machine harvestable, and thus it had become the case that by the end of the Second World War, the majority of the vineyards on Etna had actually been abandoned. By the end of the 80s, for instance, my understanding is that there are only 4 wineries making wine on Mount Etna. Today, that figure's more like 130. And this was a challenge that the brothers Diego and Alberto decided they wanted to rise to. And so, having purchased their first 3 vineyards here, set about restoring those and building a winery. So, for instance, in their Guardiola vineyard, which is their biggest and probably most prestigious vineyard here, they had to rebuild most of the dry stone walls that retain the terraces where the vines were growing. The winery has been built to try and give every attention to gentle handling of the wines, so that minimal intervention can be used during the winemaking process. They've also tried to make sure that the winery both has a cutting-edge design and fits in with the local landscape. So you have a contrast of sort of hard-edged corten steel design with local lava stone that blends to the location. The winery's also been designed with a focus on sustainability. So it's been very important that insulation has been used to ensure thermoregulation is as good as possible, but also they've used biomass energy to heat it, to try and make sure that the winery can stay cool in the middle of the summer and yet still be warm in the middle of the winter, and that temperatures don't fluctuate. For instance, their barrel hall, they talk about its thick walls being made with lava stone, ensuring the wines can do their malolactic conversion and they can age in dark surroundings that have consistent temperature and have the right levels of humidity as well. So as far as this wine's concerned, it's made entirely from a grape variety called Nerello Mascalese. Nerello Mascalese has become incredibly trendy probably in the last 10 years, and it is a variety that most commonly grows on the slopes of Mount Etna. It's a late ripening variety, and here it tends to have a wonderful sort of taut mineral character, good fresh acidity, delicate perfumes. It doesn't become too big, too rich, and commentators recently have tended to spend time comparing and contrasting these wines to those of Burgundy and of Barolo. The variety takes its name from the Mascali Plain, which is between Mount Etna and the sea, and this is where it's thought to have originated. And one of its parents is Sangiovese, and the other a white grape variety called Mantonico Bianco. The Nerello obviously relates to the fact it's a black grape, and it's by far the most common of the varieties that go into Etna Rosso. As I say, this is a pure Nerello Mascalese. Many Etna Rossos blend Nerello Mascalese with another grape variety, Nero Cappuccio. And part of what makes the variety special is its interaction with the black volcanic soils that you find on Mount Etna, combined with the influence that growing at levels of up to 1,000 meters above sea level can have on a wine. The variety tends to be trained either as individual bush vines or onto an espalier system of trellising to enable maximum exposure to the sunlight. The company states planting density as being about 7,000 vines per hectare, and they give average yield as being about 7,000 kilograms per hectare. The average age of vines in Alta Mora's vineyards is 20 years, but there are many much older vineyards on the slopes of Mount Etna. Also, all of Alta Mora's vineyards are certified as being sustainably farmed by an accreditation organisation called Sustain. Given the high altitude and the cooling influence of breezes that affect the mountain coming to and from the sea, Nerello Mascalese here ripens quite late. Picking here took place between the 11th and the 20th of October. So the grapes for this wine came from 4 different Contrada, 4 different vineyards, all within the Castiglione di Sicilia district. First of these was the Contrada Verzella, which is where the winery is. My understanding is that this is predominantly planted with Caricante, the white grape variety. So I don't think there's a large amount of fruit coming from here. It's a relatively cool terroir, despite only being at 500 meters above sea level. The next location is probably the Cusumanos' most famous and probably their most prestigious vineyard here, Contrada Guardiola. And here they have 7 hectares of vines. And because the conditions here restrain vigour and yields, this is where some of their best quality Nerello Mascalese comes from. The third location is the Contrada Fuedi di Mezzo. Here they have 3 more hectares of Nerello Mascalese, trained both to bush vines and also some on espalier terraces. Here we're about 650 metres above sea level. Here they have some of their older vines. They're deep rooted and they never suffer as a result of drought or as a result of excess humidity. The deep rooting on the vines helps give balance to them as they grow. Finally, the last of the grapes comes from the Contrada Solicciaata, where they have a further 3 hectares of Nerello Mascalese, trained both to bush vines and to espalier terraces, and this is at about 750 metres above sea level. Evidently the site here is slightly east facing and gains a little extra cooling as a result of sea breezes because of this. So everything here is picked by hand. I don't think it would be possible to machine pick these steep and sometimes terraced vineyards. They're picked into shallow crates so that the fruit isn't damaged on its way to the winery. At the winery, the fruit is moved very gently by conveyor belt and it goes to a vibrating destemmer. In that situation on a table, the grapes will fall through a hole and they will be almost plucked as if plucked by hand from the stems and then fall into a gentle roller crusher. Fermentation takes place using ambient yeasts. These are the yeasts that have either come into the winery on the fruit or were already established in the winery when the fruit arrived. Fermentation is in stainless steel tanks. Temperature is regulated to 28 degrees, so it doesn't rise too high and you don't get too harsh extraction going on here. There's a 12-day maceration and that's followed by soft pressing. Malolactic conversion takes place in stainless steel tanks. Then the wine is moved into 2,500 litre oak casks where aging occurs in temperature and humidity controlled settings. I'm not told how long the wine stays in that oak for, but the large format won't give too much oak note. What it will do though is allow a gentle fixing of those tannins and flavours as a result of a very slight oxidation with the oxygen entering through the staves of the cask. So let's take a look at the wine, shall we? I've got it in a nice big glass here because I really wanted to release the aromas as much as possible. The other thing that really highlights is quite how pale this is. I mean, if you want to compare this either to Pinot Noir from Burgundy or Nebbiolo from Barolo, that would make me think much more of Nebbiolo in terms of quite how it's just a medium depth of really quite a vibrant ruby red. But looking down through the glass, I have no difficulty seeing the stem. It's almost as if it were a very dark rosé. Swirling the wine, the label states that it has 14% alcohol. It's quite readily forming some quite noticeable tears on the side of the glass there, so that would follow that it's got a fair amount of alcoholic weight there at any rate. So let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? Gosh, the aromas are really savoury. There's a richness and a development in there. There's an underlying and quite perfumed red fruit, but that red fruit is being partnered with developed sort of notes of dried leaves. There's a spice in there, there's almost sort of ginger, nutmeg notes, but I don't think that's coming from oak aging. There aren't cedary or vanilla notes coming through. That really is a fruit and development derived spice there. I suppose we're getting into earthy notes and the top notes of sort of truffly mushroom notes as well. Also, there is a sort of underlying mineral note, maybe slight salinity, maybe a slight sulphur. There's plenty going on in the aromas, and to my mind, much more Italianate, much more Barolo than Burgundy on the aromas at any rate. So let's taste. There's a sharpness and a real bite to the acidity of the wine. It's naturally completely dry. There's a very fine structure of quite firm, quite precise tannins. There's a coffee-like structure and bitterness to the front of them, and then behind that there's quite juicy, bright red cherry fruit. Behind that you're getting these sort of gingery notes, slightly spicy notes, perhaps a white pepper note, and then those more developed notes, the sort of the touches of dried leaves, truffle and mushroom starting to show through on the finish. There's plenty going on here, and the flavours are developing in my mouth. The producer suggests that this is a wine whose drinking window should be up until about 2029, so this is probably drinking at about its optimum now. It's not a big wine. At most this is medium to full bodied. There's quite a warmth and a roundness coming from the alcohol, and that's perhaps helping to lift those spices on the finish. But it is that savoury, spicy complexity that's lingering. It's becoming a bit more of that developed truffle mushroom note once the bright red cherry fruit has faded. The wine's acidity and its structure are giving a mouth-watering nature. It gives it a lovely preciseness and an elegance that would fit with quite a wide variety of foods. I think you'd find this would work nicely with rich game dishes, with sauces. You'd find this would work with roasted red meats. Contrasts beautifully with a wide variety of cheeses. But I think it probably is a wine that needs rich foods to show it off, to play against, really. So yes, I'm actually quite impressed by this wine's length. This is not a hugely expensive wine. I will leave a link in the notes below to the Wine Searcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, and that way you can see not only where it's available but also how much it costs in your market, and that can put it in perspective. But I'm impressed for a wine of its price with its length and complexity. I think it's quite a challenging style of wine. There's plenty of enticing aspects to find in this wine. The Wine Searcher aggregated critics score for this vintage comes out at 90 out of 100. I think that's quite reasonable. I think that may reflect that there's not a little more concentration of fruit in the wine. But actually I think the wine has a lovely length and a lovely complexity that pretty much makes up for that. So I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, do please press the like button. That would be much appreciated. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, it would be great if you'd consider signing up and subscribing to my YouTube channel. That would really help the channel to grow and help to enable me to make more of these tastings. If you have any comments, please pop those in the comments box below. I'd love to know what you think about the wines from Mount Etna, Italian red wines in general, your views as to whether you think there's more similarity to Burgundy or Barolo in these wines, or anything else that relates to the tasting at all. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please pass it on to them. I'd really appreciate that. That would be great. So thank you again for joining us, and I do hope you'll manage to make some time, come and join us for another tasting in the very near future. Till then, bye for now.